I needed a car. Not wanted, desperately needed. At 17, my entire future seemed dependent on having my own set of wheels. No more depending on friends for rides. No more standing at bus stops while rain soaked through my clothes. No more awkward explanations to my mom about missed curfew because the last bus decided to run late. My earlier money-making attempts had all ended in complete failure. The ice cream shop decided I wasn't working out after I managed to drop 3 cones in a single shift. The bookstore let me walk when inventory numbers never seemed to add up correctly. The grocery store? Let's just say customer service and I weren't exactly a perfect match. So when Mrs. Alvarez caught me between classes on Thursday with that bright "I've got an opportunity" expression, I didn't automatically flee in the opposite direction. "Emily, are you still looking for part-time work?" She pushed her glasses up, wearing that knowing smile adults get when they believe they're about to fix everything for you. "Yeah." "Why?" I hitched my backpack higher. The hallway had mostly emptied as the late bell finished ringing. I know a family up in North Hills searching for a weekend sitter. They compensate quite generously. She passed me a sticky note with contact information scribbled on it. The Jenkins family. 2 boys under their care. Give them a ring today if you're interested. North Hills meant serious money. The kind of area where properties had actual names instead of just numbers. The type of families who paid sitters proper wages instead of whatever spare change happened to be lurking between their sofa cushions. 1 phone conversation and a brief, strangely formal interview later, I'd landed the position. $300 for 1 evening of monitoring television after the children were asleep. Almost too good to be genuine, but my used car savings account desperately needed that cash. That's exactly how I ended up standing before the Jenkins residence on Friday evening, gazing up at what could only be described as an actual mansion. The structure seemed ripped from some horror film, constructed entirely of stone and severe angles, surrounded by hedges trimmed to perfection and grass so uniformly even it appeared artificial. A decorative fountain occupied the circular drive. I double-checked the address, suddenly feeling completely underdressed in my ordinary jeans and simple blue t-shirt. Mrs. Alvarez's text confirmed my location was correct. 1422, Oakwood Drive. Drawing a deep breath, I approached the massive wooden front entrance and pressed the bell. The sound echoed inside like church bells rather than an ordinary doorbell. The door swung open almost instantly, revealing an imposing man dressed in an expensive suit. His dark hair sat slicked back immaculately, and his smile seemed almost rehearsed. "You must be Emily." "Punctual." "I'm Michael Jenkins." He moved aside, inviting me in with a wave that appeared carefully practiced. "Sarah and the boys are gathered in the sitting room." I entered a foyer with ceilings soaring so high my voice seemed to bounce back when I responded, "Nice to meet you." The interior resembled a furniture showroom, immaculate and untouched, as though no actual human habitation occurred there. No scattered shoes near the entrance, no accumulated mail on the hall table, not a single indication that children occupied this space. Michael guided me through a corridor lined with landscape paintings that all seemed subtly wrong. Trees stretched too tall, mountains rose too sharply, skies displayed colors too red. "We're in here, Michael." A feminine voice drifted from an open doorway. The sitting room contained even more furniture that appeared never to have been actually sat upon. A woman in a black cocktail dress rose as we entered. Her blonde hair was pulled back with such severity it must have been painful. Her makeup appeared flawless, her smile equally practiced as her husband's. "Sarah, this is Emily," Michael announced. "Lovely to make your acquaintance." She extended a hand with perfectly groomed nails. Her grip registered ice-cold and unnecessarily tight. "These represent our sons, Nathan and Timmy." I hadn't initially noticed the 2 small boys positioned on the couch. They remained so perfectly still and silent. Nathan appeared around 8, dressed in a button-up shirt with khaki trousers. His younger brother Timmy looked about 6 and wore an identical outfit. Their dark hair was styled precisely like their father's. Neither displayed any hint of a smile. "Hey there," I said, crouching to their level. "I'm Emily. I'll be spending time with you tonight while your parents step out." They fixed their gaze on me without blinking. Their eyes were deep brown, nearly black, and completely devoid of the typical curiosity children show when encountering someone unfamiliar. "Greet Emily properly, boys," Sarah prompted. "Hello, Emily." They spoke in flawless unison, their voices completely flat. No variation in tone, no hint of excitement, no trace of shyness, absolutely nothing. I tried not to show my unease. "I brought some games we could potentially play later if you're interested." No response, just those unwavering eyes fixed on me. "The boys follow an extremely strict schedule," Sarah explained, examining her diamond-encrusted wristwatch. "Michael, we should give Emily a proper tour before our departure." The walkthrough took under 10 minutes. Kitchen featuring spotless countertops and a refrigerator stocked with neatly labeled containers. Dining room containing a table capable of seating 20. Living room housing the largest television I'd ever encountered. Upstairs to the boys' shared bedroom, the sole space appearing somewhat lived in with 2 twin beds and a bookshelf holding books that seemed never to have been opened. "The boys retire at 8 p.m. exactly," Michael explained as we made our way back downstairs. "They've already consumed dinner." Sarah extended a typed document on expensive-looking paper. "These represent the rules. Please adhere to them precisely." I scanned the list, anticipating standard bedtime procedures and emergency contact numbers. Instead, 1. Boys in bed by 8 p.m. 2. Do not answer the telephone. 3. Ignore any knocking at the door. 4. Check the boys' closet through the keyhole at 8:30 p.m., 9:30 p.m., 10:30 p.m., and 11:30 p.m. 5. If the closet door stands open, close it immediately. 6. Do not enter any room with closed doors. 7. Do not leave the house under any circumstances. 8. We will return by midnight. I examined the list twice, waiting for them to burst out laughing and reveal it was all some elaborate joke. They didn't. "Is this for real?" I asked, attempting to maintain a light tone. "Absolutely serious," Michael confirmed. "The boys require routine. Any deviation greatly disturbs them." Sarah opened her purse and extracted 3 crisp $100 bills. "This covers tonight. We compensate generously because we anticipate our instructions being followed exactly $300 for one evening." My used Honda fund would leap from pitiful to nearly complete in a single night. "All right," I agreed, tucking the money away. Whatever unusual rules these wealthy people had, I could manage for one night. "So check the closet, but avoid opening any closed doors." "The boys' closet differs," Sarah interjected quickly. "That one you inspect through the keyhole initially, then open if necessary." "And why can't I answer the phone or door?" Michael straightened his tie. "Solicitors. They're terribly aggressive in this neighborhood. We don't want the boys disturbed." It still made little sense, but $300 bought considerable freedom from questioning. "Our number is on the refrigerator," Sarah said, sliding into a fur coat despite the mild Los Angeles evening. "But we'll be attending the Prescott Charity Gala and they prohibit phones inside. Emergency services are, naturally, 911. We'll be home by midnight," Michael added, guiding his wife toward the entrance. "Boys, behave appropriately for Emily." Nathan and Timmy hadn't shifted from their position on the couch. They nodded in unison, saying nothing further. After the parents departed, the house fell utterly silent. No creaking floorboards, no distant traffic sounds, not even appliance noises seemed able to penetrate the thick walls. "So," I said, turning toward the boys, "what activities do you enjoy for fun?" Nathan fixed his gaze on me. Timmy fixed his gaze on me. Neither answered. "How about a board game?" "I brought Uno and Jenga." More staring. "TV?" "Your dad mentioned you're permitted to watch until bedtime." Nothing. "Okay." "Hungry? Thirsty?" Nathan finally spoke. "We follow the schedule." His voice registered flat, completely emotionless. "The schedule says we go to bed at 8. Timmy added in the identical monotone. I checked my phone. 7:45 p.m. "Want to start getting ready for bed then?" They rose simultaneously and walked upstairs without uttering another word. I followed, increasingly unsettled by their behavior, but reassured myself they were simply shy or perhaps on the spectrum. Not every child talks constantly. Their bedroom felt noticeably colder than the rest of the house. The boys changed into matching blue pajamas, brushed their teeth in the bathroom, and climbed into their beds without any direction from me. "Would you like me to read you something?" I asked, attempting another connection. "No," Nathan replied. "The light goes out at 8 exactly." I glanced at the closet door, which remained firmly shut. Something about it seemed off. Perhaps slightly taller than a standard door. The wood darker than other doors throughout the house. "Okay then. Good night, guys." No response. They lay on their backs, gazing at the ceiling, hands folded over their blankets like small corpses. I switched off the light and pulled their door mostly closed, leaving it cracked approximately an inch as my babysitting safety course had taught me. The hallway felt warmer, and I released a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Back downstairs, I settled onto the soft couch and activated the massive television, keeping the volume low. The kitchen clock displayed 8:05 p.m. when I heard it, the loud ring of an old-fashioned telephone cutting through the quiet house. I jumped, nearly dropping the remote. The ringing originated from a landline on the wall near the kitchen entrance. I hadn't noticed it during the tour. The phone rang again, loud and insistent. I remembered the second rule on the list. Do not answer the telephone. My hand extended halfway toward the receiver before I pulled back. $300, I reminded myself. Simply follow their strange rules for one evening. The phone continued ringing, the sound grating on my nerves as I clutched the remote, attempting to watch television while ignoring the growing feeling that something about this perfect house was genuinely wrong. The phone rang 6 times before finally falling silent. I remained frozen on the couch, remote in hand, staring at the quiet wall-mounted landline. The sudden stillness felt almost worse than the ringing had been. I refocused on the television program, some cooking competition I wasn't actually watching, and tried to ignore how rapidly my heart was beating. The Jenkins house felt too vast around me, too silent, except for that intrusive phone. Everything about this place was making my skin crawl, from the immaculate furniture to those unnervingly quiet children. My phone showed 8:27 p.m. Time for the initial closet check according to the bizarre list of rules. I stood, stretching my legs which had grown stiff from sitting so tensely. The stairs produced noise beneath my feet, the first normal house sound I'd heard all evening. Outside the boys' bedroom, I paused. The hallway seemed colder than the rest of the house, shadows gathering in corners despite the overhead light being on. I bent down, feeling slightly foolish, as I placed my eye against the old-fashioned keyhole in the door. Both boys lay motionless in their beds, exactly as I'd left them. The closet door remained firmly closed. Check complete. Whatever I was supposed to be watching for hadn't manifested. At least not yet. Back downstairs, I settled onto the couch again, attempting to get comfortable. The cooking show had concluded, replaced by some crime drama featuring excessive shouting. I flipped through channels, landing on a sitcom rerun. 20 minutes later, the phone rang again. I jumped, nearly dropping the remote. The harsh mechanical sound cut through the canned laughter from the television. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3. I gripped the remote tighter, my thumbnail digging into the plastic. Don't answer the phone. The rule seemed straightforward enough, but something about that persistent ringing made my hand twitch toward it. What if the Jenkins were calling to check on their children? What if an emergency had occurred? For rings, 5 rings, 6. Silence once more. I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding and muted the television. The quiet of the house pressed in around me. No sounds from appliances, no house settling, no trees stirring outside. Just silence, thick and unnatural. My phone illuminated. A text from my friend Caitlin. How's the babysitting gig? Rich people house must be sweet. I typed back, kids are weird. House is fancy but creepy. They're paying me $300 though. The sitcom's silent mouths continued moving on screen. I restored the volume, needing some noise to fill the empty house. At 9:25, I went back upstairs for the second check. The rules specified 9:30, but I wanted it over with. The hallway felt even colder this time, and I rubbed my arms as I approached the door. I knelt again, my eye to the keyhole. I stopped breathing. The closet door stood wide open. I blinked hard, wondering if my eyes were deceiving me. But no, the dark wooden door that had definitely been closed an hour ago now gaped open. I couldn't see inside from this angle, just darkness beyond the doorway. I slowly turned the knob and pushed the bedroom door open. The hinges produced no sound, typical for this perfect house. I took a small step inside. The room felt wrong, colder than the hallway with air that seemed thicker. Both Nathan and Timmy occupied their beds, exactly as I'd seen through the keyhole. But something about how they were lying sent chills through me. They were too still, too straight, like they'd been posed rather than being actual sleeping children who shift around. I forced myself to cross the room to the closet. Don't be ridiculous, I told myself. It's just a closet that came open. Old houses have doors that don't stay closed. Never mind that everything else in this place functioned perfectly. I grasped the closet doorknob. The metal was freezing cold. I pushed the door closed rapidly, not looking inside. The latch caught with a quiet click. I backed out of the room, only turning around once I'd reached the hallway and pulled the door shut. Back downstairs, I checked my phone. 9:37 p.m. 2.5 hours until the Jenkins would return. I could manage this for $300. I could manage pretty much anything. The sitcom had ended, replaced by some reality show featuring people shouting at each other on an island. I kept changing channels, not really paying attention to what was on. At 10:15 p.m., a loud knock shattered the quiet. I leapt to my feet, startled. The knocking came again, more urgent this time. "Hello," a man's voice called from outside. "Anyone in there?" "Let me in." "I know they're in there." I moved to the window, carefully peering through a gap in the heavy curtains. A man stood on the porch, his face partially visible in the porch light. He appeared middle-aged with disheveled hair and a desperate expression. He wore a wrinkled jacket despite the mild evening. "Please," he called out, pounding on the door again. "You don't understand what they are. Rule number 3, ignore any knocking at the door." The man's fist came down harder, making the wooden door shake. "I lived here before them. I know what's in that closet." I backed away from the window, bumping into an end table and nearly knocking over a lamp. The man's words made me freeze. What did he mean? What they are? What's in the closet? I grabbed my phone and opened my messages, my fingers trembling as I typed a text to my mom. "Hey, everything okay with you?" I needed something normal to hold on to while the knocking continued, growing more desperate by the second. No response came. Mom was probably at her book club with her phone silenced. The pounding at the door grew louder, then suddenly stopped. I heard footsteps on the porch moving away, then back again. "I'm trying to help you," the man shouted, his voice muffled now as if he'd moved to another part of the house. "They're not what they seem." I looked at my phone. 10:28 p.m. Time for another closet check, though everything inside me wanted to stay away from that room. But $300 and the rules. I had to follow the rules. With the stranger still shouting outside, I crept back upstairs, my legs feeling like lead with each step. At the boys' bedroom door, I knelt, my hands trembling as I put my eye to the keyhole. I stopped cold. Nathan was standing directly on the other side of the door, his face mere inches from the keyhole, looking straight at me. His eyes were far too wide, gleaming in the hallway light like a cat's. His face revealed nothing. His mouth just a straight line. Behind him, I could see the closet door open again. There was no way he could have known I was coming to look through the keyhole. No way he could have positioned himself so perfectly to stare back at me. Yet there he was, as though he'd been waiting. I pulled back from the door, nearly falling over. This couldn't be happening. Nathan had been asleep in bed just an hour ago. How did he know exactly where to stand? How did he know exactly when I would look? I jerked back from the door, my foot slipping on the hardwood floor. I nearly fell, catching myself against the wall with one hand. I took a deep breath, trying to calm down. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe the stress and the strange rules and that man screaming outside were getting to me. After another moment of hesitation, I grabbed the doorknob and pushed it open. Nathan and Timmy lay in their beds, both perfectly still under their blue blankets. Their eyes were closed, chests rising and falling in slow, even breaths. They looked completely normal, like two little boys sleeping peacefully. But the closet door stood wide open again. I stared at the boys, then back at the open closet. I could have sworn Nathan had been standing right there, looking at me through the keyhole. But here he was in bed, apparently sound asleep. The yelling outside had momentarily stopped. In the silence, I forced myself to walk across the room toward the closet. The air felt cold against my skin, growing colder with each step. I reached for the closet door with trembling hands. I pulled it shut quickly, not allowing myself to look inside. The latch clicked, and I backed away, keeping my eyes on the sleeping boys. Neither of them moved. Neither showed any sign they knew I was there. I left the room, pulling the door closed behind me, and ran back downstairs to the living room. My hands were still shaking. I grabbed my phone from the couch, needing some connection to the normal world. The pounding on the front door started again, louder and more violent than before. The entire frame shook with the force of it. "Please," the man shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. "You don't understand what they are. You need to get out of there." I backed away from the door, moving deeper into the living room. What did he mean by what they are? The boys? The Jenkins family? The knocking grew more frantic, the door rattling in its frame with each impact. "They're not human," he yelled. "That thing in the closet, they're feeding it." A chill ran through me. I looked down at my phone, then opened my text messages. This had gone beyond strange rich people and their unusual rules. Something was seriously wrong in this house. I pulled up the contact information the Jenkins had left on the refrigerator and typed, "Someone's trying to break in. The boys are acting weird. Please come home." I hit send, then waited, watching the screen. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Sarah's response came through. Follow the rules. We'll be home by midnight. It's almost over. I stared at the message. Almost over. What was almost over? And how could she be responding if phones weren't permitted at their gala? The man outside kept pounding, his voice growing raspy. I lived here. I know what happens. They'll make you the next guardian if you stay. I sank onto the couch, clutching my phone tightly. The television was still on, some late-night talk show playing at low volume. The host's laughter sounded hollow and fake. The clock on my phone read 10:47 p.m. Just over an hour until the Jenkins returned. I could make it. I just needed to stay away from that bedroom and ignore the madman outside. At exactly 11 p.m., the television flickered. The talk show disappeared, replaced by static. Then the channels began changing on their own, flipping rapidly through news, cartoons, cooking shows, and more static. I hadn't touched the remote. It sat on the coffee table several feet away. Outside, the pounding had stopped. The sudden silence felt worse than the yelling. I moved to the window and peeked through the curtains. The porch was empty. The man was gone. I tried to make sense of what was happening. The boys who moved without sound. The closet that kept opening itself. The rules that made no sense but that Sarah insisted must be followed. The strange man who seemed to know something about this house and the family. The television continued flipping through channels on its own, occasionally pausing on images of static or distorted faces before moving on. 11:25 p.m. 5 minutes until my final closet check. Every part of me wanted to skip it, to lock myself in the bathroom until the Jenkins came home. But Sarah's text kept playing in my mind. Follow the rules. I walked up the stairs again, feeling exhausted. The house felt different now. The air thicker, the shadows deeper. I stopped outside the boys' bedroom, my hand on the doorknob. Check through the keyhole first. That was the rule. I knelt down, bringing my eye to the small opening. I stopped breathing. Both beds were empty. The blankets lay flat and undisturbed, as if the boys had simply vanished rather than gotten up. And in the corner of the room near the closet, crouched a dark shape. It wasn't human. It was too tall, too thin, with limbs bent at angles that shouldn't be possible. I couldn't make out any features in the darkness. Just a suggestion of something wrong, something that shouldn't exist in our world. I pulled back from the keyhole, my entire body shaking now. I didn't open the door this time. Instead, I backed away, then turned and ran down the hallway. The bathroom door was open. I ducked inside, locked the door, and started looking for something to barricade it with. The towel rack on the wall seemed strong enough. I yanked it free and wedged it under the doorknob, angling it against the tile floor. I sat on the edge of the tub, phone in my hand. 11:35 p.m. 25 minutes until the Jenkins were supposed to return. That's when I heard it. A soft scratching on the bathroom door. Gentle at first, like fingernails trailing lightly across the wood. Then harder, more insistent. Not knocking, not pounding, but a continuous scraping sound. The thing from the boys' room had followed me. I pressed myself against the far wall, watching the door handle. It didn't turn, but the scratching continued. Something whispered on the other side, too low for me to make out words. Just a soft hissing sound that might have been speech. The scratching continued for what felt like hours, but was probably 20 minutes according to my phone. Then suddenly, it stopped. The house fell completely silent again. Not even the noise of the heating system or the ticking of a clock broke the stillness. I remained frozen in place, afraid to move, afraid to breathe too loudly. The silence stretched on and on. I waited, counting the minutes on my phone, wondering what was waiting for me on the other side of the bathroom door. At exactly 12:05 a.m., I heard the front door open. Keys jingled, followed by the sound of footsteps and quiet voices downstairs. The Jenkins had returned. I stayed frozen in the bathroom for several more seconds, listening. The house felt different now. The oppressive silence replaced by the mundane sounds of people moving around. My legs trembled as I pulled the towel rack free from under the doorknob and set it against the wall. I took a deep breath, unlocked the door, and stepped into the hallway. Michael and Sarah stood at the bottom of the stairs, still in their formal attire. Sarah's makeup looked perfect. Michael's tie hadn't moved at all. They gazed up at me with mild curiosity, as if finding their babysitter wide-eyed and pale at midnight was completely expected. I walked down the stairs, gripping the banister to steady myself. "There's something in the boys' room," I whispered, my voice cracking. I saw it through the keyhole. Something was in there with them, and then the beds were empty. Michael held up a hand, stopping my rambling explanation. He nodded as if I'd just informed him of a minor plumbing issue. "I'll check on them," he said, his voice calm and measured. "Sarah, get Emily some water." He brushed past me and went up the stairs, walking calmly without rushing. He didn't seem to care at all that I'd just told him something not human was in his children's bedroom. Sarah touched my arm lightly. "Come to the kitchen," she said. I followed her in a daze, still trying to understand why they weren't reacting. Sarah retrieved a glass of water from a pitcher in the refrigerator and handed it to me. My hand shook so much that water spilled over the rim. She watched me take a sip, then reached into her purse. She pulled out 5 $100 bills and placed them on the counter next to the $300 I'd already received. "We usually pay extra when things get active," she explained, her tone casual as if discussing standard overtime rates. I stared at the money, then back at her. "Active," I repeated. That thing wasn't. It wasn't human. And the boys disappeared from their beds. Sarah straightened her dress. "The boys tend to wander at night. It's why we're so particular about the rules." "There was a man," I said, suddenly remembering. "Outside, pounding on the door and yelling. He said he used to live here, that he knew about whatever is in that closet." Sarah's expression shifted. Her perfect smile faded, replaced by something harder, colder. "David Mitchell," she said, her voice tight. "He used to live here. Became obsessed with the boys. He's been warned to stay away." I took another drink of water, trying to steady myself. "He said that you all aren't human. That the thing in the closet." Her laugh cut me off. It sounded too perfect, like something practiced rather than genuine. "David has mental health issues. He developed strange delusions after his wife left him. The police are aware of his behavior." Michael returned to the kitchen, adjusting his tie as he entered. His face revealed no emotion. "Everything's fine now," he reported. "The boys are asleep." "What about the—" I gestured vaguely. "The thing I saw in the corner near the closet." Michael and Sarah exchanged glances. A silent communication passing between them. "The thing in the closet comes and goes," Michael said as if discussing a minor inconvenience like a drafty window. "It never hurts the boys." I nearly dropped my glass. They'd admitted it. Just like that. There was something in the closet, and they knew about it. "What is it?" I asked. "It's been here longer than we have," Sarah said with a small shrug. She glanced at Michael again, then back to me. "We've learned to coexist." I set my glass down on the counter with a sharp click. "I should go." Sarah placed her hand on top of the money she'd already put down. "Actually, we wanted to discuss next weekend." She added 5 more $100 bills to the stack. "We'd like you to come back on Friday. We're willing to pay $1,000 for the night." I stared at the pile of cash. $1,000 for one night. That would bring my total to $1,800. Almost exactly what I needed for the used Honda my cousin Jake was selling. Why? I asked, looking up at them. Why me? After what happened tonight? You followed the rules, Michael said. Despite the disruptions. And the boys like you, Sarah added. They don't respond to just anyone. I thought about those children upstairs, their unnatural stillness. The way Nathan had stared at me through the keyhole. The way both of them had vanished from their beds. I don't know, I said weakly, even as my eyes drifted back to the money. It's just one more night, Sarah said, her voice soft and persuasive. And after tonight, you know what to expect. Did I? I hardly understood anything that had happened. The thing in the closet, I started. What does it want? To exist, Michael replied cryptically. That's all any of us want, isn't it? I looked between them, these composed people discussing a monster in their house like it was merely some unusual guest. Everything in me was screaming. The article mentioned that the owners, a family named Carson, had departed in the middle of the night, leaving many of their belongings behind. I kept scrolling and found an older forum post asking about the weird house on Oakwood Drive, where a man named Lawrence Fleming had lived before moving away without telling any neighbors. A comment mentioned that the house had been empty for almost a year after Fleming left until a family named Hudson had moved in for a short time. 3 previous owners, all of whom had left the property suddenly. The Uber pulled up to my house. I put my phone away and got out. As I walked to my front door, I felt like I'd agreed to something terrible. That by going back to that house, I was walking into something I wouldn't be able to walk away from. But I needed that car. Just one more weekend at the Jenkins house and I'd have enough. I could handle one more night there, couldn't I? I spent the entire week obsessed with the Jenkins house. Every free moment between classes and after school, I hunched over my laptop, digging through local news archives and property records. The house on 1478 Oakwood Drive had a history that made my skin crawl. The property records showed a revolving door of ownership. No family stayed longer than 3 years. The pattern stretched back to 1987 when the house was first built. Before the Jenkins, there were the Carsons, who left in the middle of the night, according to neighbors. Before them, the Flemings, who'd moved without forwarding addresses. The Hudsons before that, who'd stayed only 8 months. I found a small article from 1992 about a child who'd gone missing in the neighborhood. The search had centered around Oakwood Drive, but nothing was ever found. Another piece from 2003 mentioned unexplained disturbances reported by neighbors. Lights flashing throughout the area, strange noises at night. The police had investigated but found nothing. The most disturbing thing I discovered was a blog post from someone claiming to be a former babysitter for the Hudsons. They described children who barely spoke and strange rules about a closet. The post had been deleted, but I found it cached on an old forum. It ended mid-sentence. By Friday afternoon, I had a plan. I wasn't going in blind this time. I packed my backpack carefully, my phone with a full charge, a portable charger, a small wireless camera I'd ordered with express shipping, and a flashlight. I'd considered not going back at all, but every time I thought about backing out, I remembered the car, my freedom. Just one more night and I'd have enough. I arrived at exactly 6 p.m. The house looked the same as before, perfect stone exterior, manicured lawn, not a single leaf out of place despite the fall weather. I took a deep breath before ringing the doorbell. Sarah answered this time, her smile wide and practiced. "Emily, we're so pleased you came back." She ushered me inside, her hand cold against my back. The house felt different, knowing what I knew now, or at least what I suspected. The pristine surfaces and perfect decor seemed less like wealth and more like a stage set, a front hiding something underneath. Michael appeared from his study, adjusting his cufflinks. "Ah, Emily, right on time." He nodded approvingly. "The boys are upstairs getting ready. We'll be leaving for our event shortly." Sarah handed me the same list of rules as before. "Just to refresh your memory," she said. "The schedule is exactly the same." Michael cleared his throat. "I want to emphasize how important these rules are, especially checking the closet at the designated times and closing it immediately if found open." I nodded, trying to look compliant. "I understand." "Excellent," he said. "We'll be back at midnight, just like last time." I gathered my courage. "Before you go, can I ask you something?" They exchanged a quick glance. Sarah's smile remained in place. "Of course," Michael said. "What's in the closet?" The question hung in the air. Sarah froze, her smile staying in place, but something behind her eyes shifted. Michael answered too quickly. "Nothing to worry about," he said smoothly. "Just follow the rules and everything will be fine." "But last time, we really must be going," Sarah interrupted, checking her watch. "Boys, come down and say hello to Emily." Nathan and Timmy appeared at the top of the stairs. They descended together, barely making any sound on the wooden steps. They wore matching outfits again, dark blue pants and light blue button-up shirts. "Hello, Emily," they said together, their voices flat. "The boys have already had their dinner," Sarah said. "Bedtime is still 8 p.m. Michael handed me an envelope. "Your payment has agreed." I took it. $1,000. The final piece I needed for my car. "We'll see you at midnight," Sarah said, her hand on the doorknob. "Remember the rules." And then they were gone, the door closing behind them with a soft click. I turned to face the boys, expecting them to head upstairs to play like last time. Instead, they stood in the entryway watching me with unblinking eyes. "Do you want to play a game?" I asked, trying to sound cheerful. Neither responded. After an awkward silence, they turned and walked to the living room, sitting down on the couch side by side. They folded their hands in their laps and stared straight ahead at the blank television. I followed them, feeling uneasy about how they were acting. "Are you hungry?" "I know your mom said you ate, but maybe a snack." Nathan turned his head slowly to look at me. "We follow the schedule." I checked my phone. 6:15 p.m. Almost 2 hours until bedtime and they were just going to sit there. "What do you usually do before bed?" I asked. "Wait," Timmy said. It was the first time I'd heard him speak on his own, not just echoing his brother. His voice was soft and high like any 6-year-old's. But there was something off about it, like he was trying to mimic how a child should sound. I decided to try a different approach. "I'm going to make myself a sandwich. Are you sure you don't want anything?" Neither boy responded. I walked to the kitchen, still keeping an eye on them. The kitchen was immaculately clean like the rest of the house, with food neatly arranged in the refrigerator. I made a quick sandwich, mostly just to have something to do rather than being hungry. When I came back to the living room, the boys hadn't moved at all. They just sat there staring straight ahead. I turned on the television and flipped through channels until I found a children's show with bright colors and happy characters. Neither boy seemed to care. The next hour passed in awkward silence. I tried asking them questions about school, their toys, anything normal kids might discuss. They either didn't answer or simply gave me one-word replies that led nowhere. At 7:30 p.m., without anyone telling them to, both boys stood up. "Dinner," Nathan said. I frowned. "Your mom said you already ate." "We eat at 7:30, Timmy insisted. I followed them to the kitchen where they sat at the table. Not knowing what else to do, I opened the refrigerator and found 2 covered plates with small portions of chicken, vegetables, and rice. I heated them in the microwave and set them in front of the boys. They ate mechanically, taking small, precise bites. I sat across from them watching. The only sound was the quiet click of forks against plates. Halfway through the meal, Timmy looked up at me. His eyes caught the kitchen light in a strange way, just like Nathan's had through the keyhole. "It's hungry tonight," he said. I felt a chill run down my back. "What's hungry?" He didn't answer. Just returned to eating as if he hadn't spoken. At exactly 8 p.m., both boys stood up from the table. Their plates were clean, not a crumb left behind. Without a word, they placed their dishes in the sink and walked upstairs. I followed them, feeling nervous as I thought about the closet. In their bedroom, they changed into their blue pajamas in that strange robotic manner like before. While they were occupied, I quickly positioned my small camera on the bookshelf, pointing it toward the closet. The camera would send footage to my phone so I could observe what happened in the room, even when I wasn't there. The boys climbed into their beds, pulling their covers up to their chests and folding their hands on top just like last time. They simply stared at the ceiling without blinking. "Good night," I said from the doorway. Neither responded. I switched off the light and pulled the door mostly closed, leaving it cracked just enough to hear if anything occurred. Downstairs, I checked my phone. The camera was functioning, showing a dark room with 2 small shapes in their beds. The closet door was still closed. At 8:30 p.m., I performed my first check through the keyhole. The boys lay motionless in their beds. The closet door was closed. Everything seemed normal, or as normal as anything could be in this house. I returned to the living room and checked my phone. The camera feed displayed the same scene. 2 sleeping children in their beds, a closed closet door. I tried to focus on the television, but my mind kept returning to what might be behind that door. At 9 p.m., the phone began to ring. The same old-fashioned telephone mounted on the kitchen wall, ringing with a loud, irritating sound. I let it ring, counting 6 rings before it stopped. Less than a minute later, it started again. I checked my camera feed. The boys hadn't moved. The closet was still closed. The phone rang a 3rd time. I walked to the kitchen and stood before it, watching the old dial shake with each ring. Who was calling? What would happen if I answered? I didn't touch it. 6 rings. Then silence. At 9:30 p.m., I checked the keyhole again. The boys still hadn't moved. The closet door was still closed. I was beginning to think that perhaps this night would be different from the last. I was wrong. At 9:45 p.m., the pounding started. Loud, desperate knocks on the front door. I knew who it was before I heard his voice. "Let me in," David Mitchell shouted. "I know what's happening in there. You need to get out." I stayed in the living room away from the windows. The pounding continued. "They're not children," he screamed, his voice cracking. "They've never been children. Don't you understand? They're keeping it contained, but they're part of it." I checked my phone. The camera feed showed the boys still in their beds, unmoved by the commotion downstairs. The pounding grew more frantic. "Please, I lived here. I know what happens if you don't follow the rules." I muted the television, listening to his desperate pleas. Part of me wanted to open the door to hear what he knew, but the rules were clear. And after what had happened last time, the pounding stopped suddenly. I heard footsteps moving around the porch. Then silence. At 10 p.m., I climbed the stairs for my next check. I knelt at the keyhole, my hand shaking slightly as I looked through. Both beds were empty. The blankets lay flat and undisturbed as if the boys had simply vanished. And the closet door stood wide open. Inside the closet wasn't the hanging clothes and toys I'd glimpsed earlier. Instead, there was absolute darkness, deeper and more complete than any shadow should be. And within that darkness, something moved. I couldn't make out what it was. Just movement within the void. Movement that made no sense to my eyes. I pulled back from the keyhole. You shouldn't look at it directly. I spun around, nearly falling backward. Nathan stood in the hallway behind me with a blank face. His eyes gleamed in the dim light from the stairwell, almost like a cat's. "What is it?" I whispered. "What's in there?" Nathan tilted his head slightly, looking at me with those gleaming eyes. "It's always been here. Before the house, before everything." I looked back at the door, then at him. "Where's Timmy?" "With it," Nathan said simply. "It's his turn tonight." My mouth went dry. His turn for what? Nathan didn't answer. He just stared at me with those strange eyes, his face completely blank. I jumped back from Nathan, nearly tripping over my own feet. His eyes caught the dim hallway light, reflecting it back at me like a cat's, or something else entirely, not human. "What are you?" I demanded, my voice barely above a whisper. Nathan's face shifted, his lips stretching into what might have been intended as a smile, but looked more like someone who had only seen smiles in pictures and was attempting to recreate one. The expression never reached his eyes, which remained flat and reflective. "We're protectors," he said, his voice still carrying that eerie flatness. "It stays in the closet if we're here." I backed up against the wall, putting distance between us. "Protectors? What does that mean? What is that thing?" "It's hungry," Nathan replied, as if that explained everything. "It's always hungry, but it stays in the closet when we're here." The sound of the pounding at the front door suddenly stopped. The abrupt silence felt almost as jarring as the noise had been. I looked toward the stairs, wondering if David Mitchell had given up and left. Then I heard it, the unmistakable sound of glass breaking downstairs. Someone was breaking into the house. "He shouldn't be here," Nathan said, his head tilting at an odd angle as he listened. "It doesn't like strangers." I pushed past Nathan and ran down the hallway toward the stairs. Whatever was happening, I couldn't let some stranger break into the house while I was responsible for the children, even if those children weren't exactly normal. I took the stairs two at a time, nearly stumbling at the bottom. The sound had come from the kitchen. I ran through the dining room and skidded to a stop at the kitchen entrance. David Mitchell was halfway through the window, surrounded by shattered glass. His face was wild with desperation. A small cut on his cheek dripped blood. He froze when he saw me. "You need to get out of here," he said, his voice hoarse from all the shouting he'd done. "Right now before they come back." "You're breaking into the house," I said, grabbing my phone from my pocket. "I'm calling the police." "The police won't help," he said, pulling himself the rest of the way through the window. Glass crunched under his shoes as he stood. "They never do." "I've tried." I backed up, keeping distance between us. "Stay where you are." He held up his hands. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm trying to save you." His eyes darted around the kitchen, then back to me. "Where are they?" "The boys." "Upstairs," I said, then immediately regretted giving him that information. "No, they're not," he said with certainty. "Not both of them, anyway. One of them is with it in the closet." A chill ran down my back as I remembered what Nathan had said about Timmy. "It's his turn tonight." "What do you know about them?" I asked, still keeping my distance. "What are they?" "They're guardians," David explained, his words coming out in a rush. "The thing in the closet, it's ancient. It's been here long before the house was built. It needs to be contained, and it needs to be fed. Fed? I repeated, my mouth going dry. David nodded, his eyes wild. The children aren't children. They never were. They're its keepers, its guardians. As long as they're here, it stays in the closet. But if they leave, he trailed off, shaking his head. How do you know all this? I asked. Because I lived here, he said. 3 years ago, my wife and I bought this house. We didn't know. No one told us. But then we started hearing things at night, seeing things, the closet. It was always cold around that closet. I remembered the ice-cold doorknob, the way the air seemed thicker near the closet door. What happened to your wife? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. David's face crumpled. She became one of them. A guardian. She changed her eyes. He gestured vaguely toward his own eyes. Like theirs. Reflective, wrong. And then one day she told me we needed to adopt, that we needed children to help protect the house. My phone buzzed in my hand. I looked down at it and saw a notification from my camera app. Motion detected. I opened it with shaking fingers. The camera I'd hidden in the boys' room showed the closet, which now stood wide open. But it wasn't just open. It seemed to be expanding. The darkness inside it didn't resemble a normal closet interior. It looked like a void, an impossible space that couldn't exist within the house. And at the edge of that darkness, a thin, stretched-out shape moved. Not quite human, not quite anything I recognized. "Oh my God," I whispered, turning the phone so David could see. His face went pale. "It's coming out. We need to leave now." Before I could respond, the front door opened. We both froze, staring toward the entryway. Michael and Sarah Jenkins walked in, still dressed in their formal clothes. Their faces were grim as they surveyed the scene, the broken window, David standing among the glass, me holding my phone. "You've broken the rules," Michael said, his voice cold as he looked at me. "We were very clear about the rules." "I didn't let him in," I protested. "He broke in through the window." "Not just that rule," Sarah said, stepping forward, her eyes shifting as she moved into the kitchen light, the pupils reflecting the same way Nathan's had. "You looked into the closet when you weren't supposed to. You recorded it." David grabbed my arm. "We need to go right now." Michael lunged with unexpected speed, blocking the doorway to the dining room, our path to the front door. "No one's going anywhere. The entity requires a new guardian." "We hoped you'd volunteer, Emily," Sarah said, her voice soft but her eyes hard and reflective. "You seemed perfect. Responsible, alone. No one would miss you right away. But now we'll need someone else." She turned her gaze to David, who backed away in terror. "No," he whispered. "Not again." I got away. "No one gets away," Michael said. "You just delayed the inevitable." I looked down at my phone again. The camera feed showed the dark spot in the closet expanding, darkness spreading into the boys' room. And inside that darkness, something was forming. I didn't wait to see more. I shoved my phone into my pocket, grabbed my keys from the counter, and made a split-second decision. While Michael and Sarah were focused on David, I ran toward the broken window. Glass cut into my palm as I gripped the windowsill, but adrenaline dulled the pain. I pulled myself through the opening, ignoring Sarah's shout behind me. I landed hard on the grass outside, scrambled to my feet, and ran toward my car in the driveway. Behind me, I heard more glass breaking and David scream. A terrifying sound that suddenly stopped. My hand shook so badly I could barely get the key into the ignition. The porch light came on, illuminating the front of the house. I looked up as the engine started and saw the Jenkins family standing on the porch. Michael and Sarah in front, Nathan and Timmy standing unnaturally still beside them. All four pairs of eyes gleamed in the light. I threw the car into reverse, backing out of the driveway so fast I nearly hit the mailbox. As I shifted into drive, I saw something else emerge from the house. Something tall and thin with limbs that bent in impossible ways. It moved in quick, jerky motions, not like anything normal. I called 911 as I drove, my phone on speaker beside me. When the operator answered, I tried to explain what had happened. The break-in, the screaming, the family that wasn't a family. I didn't mention the thing I'd seen coming out of the house. They wouldn't believe half of what I was saying anyway. Officers will be dispatched to the address, the operator assured me. Are you safe now? I'm driving away, I said, checking my rearview mirror. The road behind me was empty, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. But I don't think the police will find anything wrong when they get there. The Jenkins, they're good at hiding what they are. Just get yourself somewhere safe, the operator said. Do you need medical attention for your injuries? I looked down at my bleeding hand, the cuts from the window glass stinging now that the adrenaline was wearing off. No, I'm okay. Just some cuts. After I hung up, I kept driving, putting as much distance as possible between myself and that house. In my rearview mirror, the road remained empty, but I couldn't stop checking it every few seconds. I thought about David Mitchell's scream, cut off mid-sound. About Sarah's reflective eyes and her talk of guardians. About Nathan's words. It stays in the closet if we're here. But I'd left. And in my final glimpse of the house, I'd seen it emerge. The thing that had been trapped in that closet, now free. I pressed the gas pedal to the floor, pushing my old car faster than it wanted to go. The engine whined as I sped through the night, away from 1478 Oakwood Drive and whatever ancient horror had been released from its prison.